Hey guys, welcome to Your Michigan Compass. Today we're at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. We're going to be doing a multi-part series. This is going to be part one. I'm not sure how many it's going to take, but I'm going to try and keep them down to 20-minute videos. So come along with us.
The Henry Ford Museum is massive. It would take days to see everything inside here. This is the area of the museum that I'll be focusing on for this video.
One of the things you'll find a lot of throughout the museum are these mold-orama machines, and you can get different things molded right here, and then they'll come out at the bottom. The cost for this is $3, and they're like a waxy plastic. This particular one is the Wiener Mobile, which we'll be seeing in just a few minutes. I might get one of these today, but I think I'm going to pass on this one and maybe get a different one. Starting at the far end of the museum, they have lots of farm equipment down this way. And the first piece we're looking at is by International Harvester out of Chicago. And this actually has a date of 1905. Over here, a couple of manual plows. This one here is a John Deere plow dating back to 1845, believe it or not. Probably one of the first John Deere plows ever made. Over here we have a cutaway view of a Fordson tractor from 1926. This device right here is a corn planter, and the date on this is around 1875 by Vandiver Corn Planter Company. Over here, something a little bit more modern. This is an FMC, Food Machinery Corporation, not Ford Motor Company, Food Machinery Corporation, Model 2000 Cascade tomato harvester from 1969. This looks a little bit more modern. Apparently the tomato plants would go in here and get cut off, and tomatoes would be going up that conveyor belt there, and the farmer would be driving right here. This next vehicle is an International Harvester pickup truck from 1912, and looking into the back of the pickup truck, you'll notice the big canisters, which probably carried milk and things like that back in the day. Over here, a Ferguson Brown tractor from 1938. Now I know the tractor's gray, I'm not saying it's brown. The name was Ferguson Brown. And right here, a classic, we've got a John Deere tractor from 1941. And to be honest with you, they really haven't changed a whole lot. Still look very similar. Maybe a few modern improvements, but still very similar. And the color is still the same. Over here we have a Ford tractor from 1952. And at first I thought this canopy was connected to the actual tractor. And it kind of is. This strange looking device connected to that Ford tractor from 1952 is a tobacco harvester. And apparently you would probably have quite a few people sitting on this thing, and these arms extend out and they would go through and harvest all of the tobacco in the fields. This right here is an Alice Chalmers 1018 tractor, and this has a date of 1914. It's kind of like a trike, but that wheel is definitely offset to the driver, which probably made this a little difficult to drive. This particular device right here is a combined thrasher and separator from 1870. This was a George Westinghouse and Company product out of New York. And it kind of looks like an old wagon from the West. I mean, it's got wagon wheels on it. Look at that. And it looks like most of this is built out of wood, rope, and very few metal parts on this thing. This might look like a train, but it's not. This is actually some sort of tractor. And you can see those big wheels in the back. It is actually an Avery steam tractor from 1916. So while it is not a train, it is steam powered and it looks a lot like a train. All right, guys, well, I told you it was coming up, and here we are. It's the Wiener Mobile from Oscar Mayer Yellow Band Wieners, built in 1952 to help promote their wieners. The Wiener Mobile was very popular and appeared in parades and many other areas throughout the country. You may or may not remember, back in January, we came here for the Marvel exhibit, which was just through those doors. It is now gone. The Marvel exhibit is gone. But I'll put a link to that video in the show notes so you can catch it if you missed out on that exhibit. Over here, a Granger fanning mill from 1886. This would help clean the grain. And there it is. A giant wooden box with few metal parts, just like we saw earlier on that Westinghouse device. Over here we have another one. This one is a Johnston & Linehan gem grain grater, built between 1899 and 1916. This was built in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and it says so right on the device itself. Again, another wood device with a few metal pieces. I was reading this sign. It's rather interesting. It's funny how some things have gone full circle. Right here we have a Zenith radio wind charger, built between 1935 and 1937. And this was to power radios prior to electrical being out in rural areas, farms and whatnot. So they'd have a radio and they could listen in and check the weather and find out when tornadoes are coming and things like that. And right there it is. Imagine that. Today, we're using wind power again to power homes and all kinds of things. Well, this odd-looking device with the stainless steel bowl on the top is a cream separator built between 1939 and 1947. It was designed by Raymond Loewy International Harvester Company, Chicago, Illinois. And right here we have a 1975 Sperry New Holland combine. This was used to harvest the corn. And normally you would be able to go up there and take a look. Unfortunately, it is closed due to our current circumstances. Over here we have a Fish Brothers wagon. This is a farm wagon, and this particular wagon was built between 1895 and 1902. And you'd sit right up there. Over here we have a Massey Harris combine, and this one was built in 1938. This Altman Taylor steam tractor was built in 1886. And this one is a Bryan steam tractor. This one was built in 1924. You'll notice this one being a little bit newer. It's a little less like a train and a little bit more like a tractor. Over in this area we have a large assortment of heating stoves, all from different eras. They're all numbered and they all have different dates, with number 1 starting about 1900 and moving up to number 22 from 1860. Over here, this is a kitchen from the late 1700s. And if you look here, they're spinning some yarn. Again, we've got that fireplace where all the cooking would be done. This time it's like a plate that's hanging over the fire pit. Table, not much has changed. Wooden plates, it looks like there's one metal plate, a couple of bottles, and a wicker and wood seat. Don't see much in the way of lighting, except possibly up on that mantle. There's a device up there, could be some sort of oil lamp. I'm not quite sure, it's a little too far away for me to see. Here's an example of a kitchen from around 1840. You'll notice that all of the bowls and utensils are wooden. In fact, everything here on this table is wooden. Look over at the kitchen counter over there. A couple more tools, some of them are wood. There's a tin pan and some sort of metal grater attached to a wooden handle. Got your water pitcher or possibly even a hot water kettle of some sort. No electricity, so you'd have your lantern up there with a candle in it. A few more items back on that shelf. That shelf in the corner looks like it's got a butter churn on it. And actually on the bottom there, on the left, that would probably be your hot water kettle. Ladle with holes in it over there. And this is where you did all of your cooking. Notice the black kettle hanging over the fire. And up on the mantle, a few more candles for lighting, and a clock. Moving up a few years, we've got a kitchen from the 1890s. This one, it's a wood table, and you'll notice they're using a tablecloth now. And we have a few, looks like maybe cookie cutters, metal cookie cutters. One of a horse and one of a cow. There's a grinder in the far corner of the table, maybe to grind coffee. And another device on the other corner, which looks like maybe a potato peeler. And then here we have a sifter of some sort. Notice the kerosene lamp and the clock. And over here, a wood burning stove, no fireplace this time. Actually, it's not wood. Just notice that there's coal in that bucket. So it's a coal burning stove. Metal pot on the stove and a kettle. And over there on the wall, the sign that says, "No place like home." One more thing to mention, while there is a sink, there's no actual running water. What you've got over there is a pump, and you would pump the water into the sink and maybe use that pitcher to rinse things off, but I'm not sure if there was a bucket underneath there. I noticed there's some cabinet doors. I don't know where the water would go to when you were done with it. And finally over here, we've got a kitchen from the 1950s. Notice the flooring. We've got tile flooring. Painted wood table this time around. And as we zoom out, you can see we finally have some plumbing. Look at that sink. Glass dishes over there. There's electric, so we've got an actual incandescent light bulb. There's an ironing board and an iron. Our stove looks to be a gas stove over in the corner. Next to it, we've got a little countertop area where you can store some goods. And then next to that, a refrigerator. Back over here where the heating stoves were, I forgot to mention, there are some examples of lighting fixtures throughout the years. These don't have dates or any placards telling you anything about them. But if you look at that one right there, it says police on it. This one, Pure Wines and Liquors. These are some very interesting lights. And because there's no light bulb in them, I don't know if it's an electric light or if these were candle, or in this particular case, this one was definitely kerosene. Those look like they might have been gas. Looking at the fixtures underneath and the little valve. And maybe that one was a candle of some sort. Well, over here, we have a barbecue cart from General Electric in 1968. One side's got a grill. The other side has a griddle and 2 electric stovetop units. There's even an oven attached. I'm not sure what you'd cook for a barbecue in an oven. Back in those days, things were a little bit different. This kiosk here with the flags was used at the 1964 New York World's Fair. And this was used at the IBM Pavilion. This is an Eames lounge chair from 1956, very popular back in those days, often duplicated and imitated. And over here is that Eames chair we were just talking about. This one's all put together. I do apologize for the noise. If you hear that little ping-ponging type sound, it's coming from this room here. They have a special exhibit called Mathematica, and there's lots of marbles and balls that bounce around and count and do different crazy things. All right, over here, starting back in the 1700s, right here we have a joint stool. That is what number 1 is. It's considered a joint stool. It was used from 1710 to 1730, and the chair in the background used between 1650 and 1675. It's a great chair. One of the things I just learned, it says chairs were only used by the wealthy or important people. Imagine being poor and not having a chair to sit on. Number 3 is a chest used between 1690 and 1705. That would be that one right back there. This side chair says it was used between 1715 and 1725. And this is a gate leg dining table used between 1730 and 1765. This unique looking table right here was used from 1805 to 1820, and it is a ladies' work table. This unique looking stand right here is a sheet music holder or print stand. And that seat in the back there is a window seat, dated 1805 to 1820. Now, number 1 here is definitely more modern. That is a Morris chair built from 1912 to 1916. And then we've got this slanted front desk and chair used between 1910 and 1920. And then we've got something a little bit more modern here that if you didn't know any better, you'd think it was a piece of art, but it's actually a chair. Number 7 says coconut chair, and it's from 1955. Looking back towards the back wall there, number 6 is a desk used between 1934 and 1941. And this particular desk says it was designed by Gilbert Rode, and he was instrumental in steering the Herman Miller Company away from traditional furniture design. This was made by Herman Miller of Zeeland, Michigan. Number 5 there is just an armchair from 1971 to 1989. And down below, you've got this very modernistic looking coffee table, which was originally designed in 1944. Over here we have a wide array of different things, starting with the heating stove from 1886. The cabinet that you see in the background there, that wood one, the 2 next to it, says it is a RCA Radial 60 receiver and cabinet, 1927 to 1928. Number 3 is a very cool looking retro TV, the Predicta television receiver from 1958 to 1960. And then next to that, the wooden box with the cabinet doors concealing the TV is a television receiver from 1949. Got a couple different sewing machines, starting with an older machine, which was built between 1860 and 1865, and then ranging to this newer one right there. Over here, a phonograph built in 1919. This was actually made by Thomas Edison. You'll look in the background here and notice the Edison logo. Over here we have some more older furniture. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I will give you a quick view of all of them. There's a lot of furniture to see here. And if you ever get the chance to come to the Henry Ford Museum, I definitely recommend it. There's a lot to see here. You can actually spend several days, much like I'm doing for this video series. I'm going to be filming as much of this as I can over several days and putting out a few different videos so you guys can see everything that's here. Even if I can't explain it all, you'll get a good idea of what's here and what's available for you to see and do. Well, I've got a couple items that I don't see any signage for, but if I had to guess, I would say that this is a child's potty training rocker? A potty training rocker. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't rock when I'm in the bathroom. And then this one here, this looks like it might be some sort of wash basin sink without the plumbing. And it's funny how that bowl is so similar to some of the styles we're using today. The only difference is we put a drain in the bottom and there's a spigot or a faucet above. Over in this area, we have a vast array of different chairs used throughout history. This one on the far right here, labeled number 10, dates all the way back to 1675. Most of the other chairs here are in the 1700s and early 1800s. The newest of these being the rocking chair, which was actually used into the 1900s. All right, this particular area contains furniture that has some history to it. This first desk right here is a U.S. House of Representatives desk. This is a desk used in the U.S. House of Representatives in 1857 with the matching chair. This card table was actually owned by John Hancock between 1765 and 1780. This high chest of drawers in the background here was actually owned by George Washington's mother, Mary Ball Washington. owned between 1700 and 1730. This rather unique looking rocking chair was owned by Cornelius Vanderbilt, 1865 to 1875. This portable writing desk here in the middle was owned by Edgar Allan Poe, 1830 to 1849. This clawfoot drop leaf table was owned by Mark Twain from 1830 to 1860, and there's a portrait of him right above it. Both this table and this chair were owned by Abraham Lincoln back in the early 1800s. Over here, a couple of unique pieces dating back to the 1700s, starting with this chest. And this was painted with different stylized symbols. One particular is the Tudor Rose of England and the Fleur-de-Lis of France. And then back here, this was brought here from Germany by an immigrant who moved to America and lived in Pennsylvania. Just amazing craftsmanship. So there are a few places where you can get food inside.
And the Plum Market Kitchen happens to be one of those places that you can get something. You can do a grab and go. They have some fresh fruit, some salads and things like that. They also have a hot area where you can get soups and fresh sandwiches, hot sandwiches, or you can even get a deli sandwich. Well, here's a quick look at their menu. I opted to get the cold pre-made deli sandwich. I wasn't looking for something big, just something to kind of tide me over till dinner time.
All right, I ended up getting the chicken ranch baguette, and I used my member discount, and it took off a whole $1, which brought the sandwich down to $9. And then tax, I was right back almost up to $10 for this sandwich. It looks good. So the sandwich was not bad at all. It does have whole pieces of chicken in it, and it's on an artisan bread, which kind of made it a little bit above a standard sandwich. I don't know if it's worth $10.
But just like many theme parks, food is more expensive in a place like this.
All right, so we just finished up with lunch. I've got a new fresh, clean mask on. It's time to get back over to the exhibits and see what else is out there for today.
One of my favorite things to see here is kind of tucked away in the back of the museum. I'm just going to tell you that it's very retro and it's very cool looking.
You know, there's a lot of unique things here at the Henry Ford Museum, but none quite as unique is the Dymaxion house. The Dymaxion house was supposed to be the home of the future, and it looks like we can actually get in there. I don't know how close we can get, but we're definitely going to go around it and take a look. This was made by the Beech Aircraft Corporation, and it was a new way of living for 1946. The sign says, "Welcome to our tour. We'll change the way you live." It has mass-produced parts, efficient systems, modern materials, and beautiful styling. Who doesn't want to live in a house that looks like a UFO? The concept with the Dymaxion house was that you would purchase it in a showroom, much like buying a car. Here's a photo from the inside of one of the Dymaxion houses. And over here, concept of what the living room could be like and the different patterns and colors you could choose. And this sign in particular says the Dymaxion house is a permanent fireproof home designed to take advantage of 20th century materials and manufacturing technology.
A complete house for $6,500, the price of a Cadillac. This cornerless cottage is hung from a stainless steel core with plumbing, heating, and air conditioning built in. A rooftop ventilator changes the air every 6 minutes. In the 2 bedrooms, pivoting closets are get-atable with the flick of a wrist.
No, that is not a mirror. This is actually aluminum, and it's what they plan to build the Dymaxion out of. Some of the other building materials were plastic, naugahyde, fabricoid, lumite, and plexiglass. And here it is, the Dymaxion house. Not sure yet if we can get inside. I have a feeling that the door will be closed because of our current situation, but they do have a lot of plexiglass. The lights are on. It's pretty easy to see inside, so you can get an idea of what this is like. And down towards the bottom, notice that it's on these little, almost like jack stands, almost like a what you would see at a carnival, where they would have the different rides and stuff anchored with guide wires and things like that. There's no signs, but it is locked. I checked. That would be your kitchen right there. All stainless steel countertops. Open ceiling for the entire unit. Moving along this way, we've already seen the living room and the kitchen. This is kind of a cutaway view of what the inside looks like. This might be maybe possibly a bedroom or an extra room of some sort. And over there, there's our bedroom. Let's see if we can't get a better view. There's the bedroom. The bed. Bathroom back over there in the corner. Very small bathroom from the looks of it anyway. Closets. Let's see what we can see from this angle.
No orders were ever filled for the Dymaxion house, and only 2 prototypes were ever built, one of which is on display at the Henry Ford Museum. This next exhibit is called Your Place and Time, 20th Century America. Imagine, if you will, buying a brand new car for just $850. And there it is, the brand new Overland. Believe it or not, it used to cost just 5 cents to go to the movies. I've seen that one before. I love a good comedy.
Look at that box of Tinker Toys. I remember having those when I was a kid. In fact, I believe a few years ago, they had a table set up where you could play with Tinker Toys. Look at that toaster. Sheer hair remover. An old school telephone up there. And an Art Deco looking radio. And this display case says Hollywood Souvenir Store. And these are all movie-based toys and memorabilia from the years. Gone with the Wind. A couple of dolls. Pinocchio. Laurel and Hardy. Shirley Temple. And this area is the newsstand, and they've got different magazines from throughout the years.
I've just been handed a message that came in from Grover's Mill by telephone. At least 40
tonight of the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars. The battle which took place tonight at Grover Mills has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by an army in modern times. 7,000 men armed with rifles and machine guns, 120 known survivors. The rest strewn over the battle area from Grover's Mill to Plains.
This is the famous War of the Worlds radio show that aired October 30th, 1938. It was so realistic. People huddled around their radios and thought that we were actually under attack from aliens. They have a progression of TVs throughout the years. This is a 1950s TV. No remote control there. Get up and turn the dial. Over here, it looks like it's older, but this is a 1960s TV. And that was the same thing. Had to get up and turn the dial. And then finally, a 1970s TV. And those had dials as well, but that was right around the time that remotes came out. Here's something you may not remember. Back before we had cable guides, on the box, you had a TV guide. You would have to look up the day, for example, June 15th, 1967, and then pick the time. Here's the evening, what channel, and it'd tell you what show is on and which episode. And while this exhibit shows some records in the background there, that's actually an AM radio, which is what everybody listened to prior to having the money to get a record player or a stereo of some sort. In case you've never seen this before, this sphere-looking thing that almost looks like a head, that's an 8-track player. That's before cassette tapes. And above, you'll notice some of the 8 tracks. My parents actually had something that looked like that. Over here, an old school stereo system made by Zenith. And some records. Over here, an old Wurlitzer jukebox. You could go to your favorite restaurant or bar and play one of the 50, 75, or 100 songs that were available in there. Nowadays, you just go and it's all based on the internet. You can pick any song in the world and it'll play it. You just have to pay. Over here we have a geodesic dome, popular in the mid-70s. A lot of the hippie culture would build these and live inside and live off the land. Lots of green plants, very basic things inside. All right, class is in session. Take your seats, children. This sign says Generation X. That is me. And it talks a little bit about what you grew up with. Watched Sesame Street and Electric Company and sang Conjunction Junction. Yes, I can check that box. Wanted cable so you could watch your MTV. Yep, that's true too. Cable was just starting out. Had a Walkman, boombox, telephone, and maybe even a computer in your bedroom. Well, the telephone was a corded phone. We didn't have cell phones back then. No computer. We did have a computer in the house. Walkman and boombox, yes to both. So yeah, that's pretty much me. This red, white, and blue phone here We did not have that actual phone, but we had the same phone in all black in our house when I was a child. One of the first video game systems, Pong. I did not have that. That was before my time, actually. I do remember drinking various sodas out of a bottle, and they did taste much better, believe it or not. Over here, an Atari 2600, and we did not even have that in my household. We had something different. Now, if I see it, I will definitely let you know. This cartridge right here, E.T., one of the worst selling games of all times for the Atari 2600. It was so bad that they had made thousands and thousands of copies and nobody would buy them. So they ended up burying them in a landfill. That's why there's dirt and everything's kind of crushed up a little bit, just trying to poke fun at the fact that thousands of those were buried in a landfill. Now here's a game I actually had. This is called Computer Perfection, and I believe this was a game similar to Simon, but instead of only having 4, you had quite a bit more. It looks like 10 different symbols on there that you would have to hit. I do remember this Merlin game, and every one of my friends owned one of these electronic footballs back in the 80s. I was not one of them. And there's a speak and spell. So this is the area I was thinking of that had the Tinker Toys at one time. Of course, everything's changed due to COVID, and these bins are now completely empty. There's nothing over here. But there was Tinker Toys. All of these contained Tinker Toys, and you could build things with them. It was quite fun. We have some comic books from different companies throughout the years. That Spider-Man 2099, I actually have that comic in one of my boxes put away. I wasn't into the comic at that time, but I bought it thinking that it might be worth some money, and considering it's in a glass case, who knows? I'll have to look that one up. Lost in Space. There's the robot. That robot, not to be confused with Robbie the robot from Forbidden Planet. Completely different robot, but something you may not have known, that robot was made by the same people that designed Robbie, and it appeared in Lost in Space. These shoes were a very big thing when I was growing up. Every kid wanted a pair, but they were not cheap and not easy to come by. One of the things I did have right here, a Swatch watch. I, to this day, still own a Swatch watch. However, the band has deteriorated and has become very brittle, and it just snaps and falls apart if you try and move it at all. I don't know if they still make bands for that. The watch itself is in okay condition. It's pretty scratched up, but it still works. That was kind of one of the great things about Swatch. They were pretty tough. Switzerland made. Back before voicemail, we had these answering machines that would record your messages on a tape. And then down here, this is actually a VCR from way back in the 80s. And you would record your shows on a tape, no hard drives. And of course, the infamous Walkman. Several iterations of this. I believe this is the cassette version. I did own several cassette versions. And by the time we got around to the CD versions, I had purchased several cassette versions. By the time we got to the CD version, everybody was selling those, and they all worked pretty much the same, unless you bought a really cheap one. As long as you spent a little bit of money on it, you were getting a decent CD player. Next to that, an old Apple computer. Now, I never had an Apple when I was growing up, but you'll notice it does have a 3.5-inch disc slot in the front, and I do remember those, definitely. Of course, the Tamagotchis. the virtual pet that would beep and annoy you constantly, and you'd have to hit buttons to feed it and put it to sleep and things like that. Most annoying thing ever, really. Never had one though. Over here, if you watched my last video, in my last video we saw an F-117. Here's a toy F-117. All right, this is supposed to be a teenager's room back in the 80s. Bob Marley poster up there. And a Depeche Mode poster. Room is very messy. Typical teenager. All right, so I did mention that I would try and get one of these Moldoramas. Now this one is a 1965 Mustang. I already purchased that a few years ago for my daughter, but over here we have the bust of Abraham Lincoln, and I think I'm gonna get that one. All right, we'll just slide this through. All right, here we go. And the mold's gonna separate now. And there it is, Abraham Lincoln's head. And he gets scraped off and dropped in the little bucket. Now these come out, they're pretty hot. So we'll just grab it real quick. Yeah, he's a little warm. Let's see if we can set him up here. And there he is. I'm gonna let him cool for a second before I put him in my pouch. But it's Abraham Lincoln's head. Well, all right, guys, that's going to do it for today's trip out to the Henry Ford Museum. We will continue this tour in the next video. I'm not sure when that's going to be. It might be a few weeks before we get back out here. But as you can see behind me, we've got industrial machinery and how that came about coming up on our next video that's in this series. So guys, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and don't forget to click on that compass so you can stay subscribed for future videos. We'll see you next time, and don't forget, adventure's just a short drive away.